Welcome to LPA Presents. I'm your host, Matthew Rhodes, here today with Gregory. I don't want to butcher your last name. Could you
Give it a
pronounce it?
whirl. Give it a try.
Menandarno?
Close, but not really. Mandarano. It
Mandarano?
is Italian, yes.
A professional screenwriter and my teacher. How are you doing today?
Doing all right. How about yourself?
I'm here. Now, I have some questions I'd like to ask to better understand how the screenwriting process works. I'll reply to your answers where needed with time permitting. I can't wait to hear your response.
Oh my God. All right. The pressure is on. Let's do this. Screenwriting 101, question one. I've got my number two pencil.
What inspired you to become a screenwriter?
Inspiration. Yeah, it's like starting with the hardest question. All right. So, all right. Let's see. I guess it started with me being a writer, right?
Mhm.
Fourth grade. I write a short story, and it was so cool, and I knew I wanted to write more short stories. And I liked role-playing games, and role-playing games, I mean, like, at the time, video games, right? You're
Mhm.
talking Dragon Warrior or Dragon Quest for Nintendo, Final Fantasy for Nintendo, and those were games that were story-based. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of combat, but it's more focused on story. You could actually have a character go to another character and have an interaction. It felt more real time than books. Not that I didn't like books, but I liked books. Then in high school, I took a video class, and at that point, I had already been introduced to tabletop role playing games,
Mhm.
dice, pen and paper games, Dungeons and Dragons, Palladium, Star Wars D6, GURPS, going down the list, Vampire the Masquerade. Um, with video class, it was a different medium, and I got a chance to write some short scripts for filming. I didn't film any of the short scripts. Everything that we filmed was off the cuff, and then for the final project, I wrote a 30-page film. And I tapped this theater actor in our school, and he attempted suicide the day before we were going to start filming, and
Mhm.
ended up in the hospital, and we visited him and everything, but we still had to film because I had a grade hanging on it. So I tapped one of my friends who was not an actor and filmed the worst movie ever, but I still have it. It was 30 minutes of ridiculousness called The Blood Moon, and that was the first script that I wrote, and I put it aside, and I didn't really care much for it or think much of it for that long. And then 6, 7 years later, I took a class at the New York Film Academy for screenwriting,
Mhm.
and the class just opened my eyes into realizing that long form fiction, writing a book, writing novels, like, even though I've written a couple, it isn't really my cup of tea. And I
Right.
loved the idea of being able to tell a story in a visual manner, which sort of beckoned on the way in which you would play pen and paper role playing games.
Mhm.
Because, barring having miniatures, which some games you did, and many you did not, everything needed to be visual. The entire story needed to be visual. It was visual, it was action, and it was interaction.
Mhm.
And screenwriting is that type of storytelling device where it is, like the old adage, write what you see. I didn't even know, is that it? No, no unfilmables. I know that's the rule. Don't, even though it's a rule meant to be broken. But yeah, I don't know if that answer is too much of a
Yeah.
ramble for you, but
Oh no.
role playing games inspired me to become a screenwriter. There's your answer.
And I'll have to go into full depth later about how I got into it, but needless to say, I had actually started when I was living in Salt Lake City. I was trying to just go from writing novels to screenwriting because I wanted to see my work in a different medium.
I gotcha.
But How do you approach a screenplay?
Oh my gosh. How do I approach it in terms of how do I begin to start the process of writing it?
Yes.
Okay, so I have shown my approach on my Twitch channel. I've written over 30 scripts live on Twitch from conception to finished product. So I can walk you through the steps that I would take. The very first step is concept, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's being born of a cool character that you want to tell a story about, or a cool moment, or knowing like a story, bit of a story that you feel could be fleshed out, right? But
Mhm.
sometimes you sit down and you don't know what you want to do, and there's a blank space, and a lot of people have this problem where they don't know where to begin. Well, in terms of someone who's written a lot of material, where I'll generally start off with is, if I don't know where to begin, I want to write something that A, is marketable, that
Mhm.
has a chance of getting sold, that B, is timely in terms of it's something that fits the current mood, the current vibe of the marketplace, looking at what's been selling, what's been getting made. And then like you look at genre choices, what genres are strong for you, like what you're good at writing, or if it's anything what you feel like writing, or
Mhm.
if you're just looking for something that's marketable. You could go to the basics, where things that often sell are stuff, or get interest, are things that are based off of IP. So you go to the public domain area of works. What are, the lists of popular public domain IPs that need a new approach, something that subverts the expectation, something that flips it on its head.
Mhm.
Like, for example, you have Alice in Wonderland and you have Wizard of Oz, two public domain IPs, and there was a popular spec script a few years ago, that was, I think it was called Rose and Alice, or Dorothy and no, Dorothy and Alice. Rose is another character from Alice in Wonderland, or one of them, whatever. It was Dorothy and Alice was the name of the script. It hit the blacklist, I think, but it just like an example of a melding of public domain. I've written a project that was Second Star. It's a project that melds Peter Pan and King Kong, for example,
Mhm.
or like I have a project that is like um, a procedural police sitcom, but the main character is Santa Claus, and there's lawyers involved.
Mhm.
Whatever. You figure out the concept, right? Once you have a concept, I like to write like a basic log line, not like an actual log line you're going to use, but something that summarizes the story really short,
Right.
right? Then I start breaking down story ideas. Where do I see it going? Do I necessarily know what the ending is? What is the basic loose structure? And the way I'll do it is I'll be writing, and I'll write what I'm thinking. And if I'm asking a rhetorical question, a question about where the narrative can go, a question about the story, I'll write it down. And slowly I'll start piecing together an approach to get into the story. What is the goals? Do I have a main character yet? What is the stakes that are involved? What's the urgency? Do I have set pieces? Is
Mhm.
there some sort of climax that I want to have involved, right? Once I have a loose way into the story, where I have a basic concept and a basic structure,
Mhm.
I'll move on to character. And character, I believe, is the most important part, and it's where I'll spend the majority of the time. And I'll list out all of the characters that I can conceive of being in the script so far, and then I'll start writing out lengthy background on the character, who they are, where they were born, what their childhood was like, who their parents were, what they did, where their life went. And then you reach a point in the background where the story has started. And then you start like in the background section, I'll end up with a lot of expansive concepts and ideas that end up getting used in the structure of the story. And eventually I have a whole lot of character stuff,
Mhm.
right? After I have all the character work and I know what every character wants and I know in general where the story is going to end up, I'll create a loose structure. There's this, if it's a film or if it's a TV pilot, of course, the structure is different. I like to go for film by the Save the Cat structure where I'm not going to spout it off, but it's basically a breakdown of each potential section in the screenplay, just to have it there as a reference point to remind yourself of where the breaks are in act one. And a lot of that struggle is for earlier stages of writers where you haven't gotten to the point yet where it doesn't, none of that matters, you just instinctively know um the pacing and the feel of writing to know where the breaks are and when to move from section to section of the story and where low points are dramatically effective, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
right? Then once I have a loose uh, beat sheet of where the story can go, this is a dividing point. Sometimes I will start writing the script. Other times I will do a step outline. A step outline is where you literally have every single scene and you write slugs. So, like, interior bathroom, Bob's house, stay. And then you write everything that happens in the scene. You don't include dialogue, but you can throw in, and you would go through every single scene one by one by one by one. I've done that maybe 5 times, and I've written over 40 scripts. The times where I've done it are generally projects where I have so much material, like a biopic,
Mhm.
where you just really need to break the story into manageable sections. I know a lot of people work with note cards and all these fancy tools, and like a step outline is like my version of the fancy tool, right? I don't like
Mhm.
using it all the time. Sometimes I will. Otherwise, in a normal case, like with the script that I just wrote, what it is I'll go in knowing the characters and knowing the loose structure.
Mhm.
And what I don't know is exactly where every scene takes place or necessarily what happens in every scene. And I just know where the story is going and I know the characters. And then you come up with an interesting place to begin. There's a great article in scriptshadow.net from yesterday that talks about the good ways to open a script, because the opening is very important. The
Right.
first 10 pages are essential in a script just to capture a reader's interest, give them the belief to want to in the writer to want to invest the time. And then what I would do is just piece by piece go through the script scene by scene, trying to make each individual scene as entertaining as possible and not really coming up with the specifics of the scene until I'm writing the scene.
Right.
That way, each individual scene is fluid into being based off of the previous one, but more importantly, breaking down each scene into its elements, making sure it's entertaining, making sure it's active, knowing the characters, and knowing what they want is essential. And there's a million other approaches, but um, what I'll just do is session by session. I tend to write in 5-page chunks. There
Mhm.
was this script that was it won a contest, and it was a major script on Script Shadow that Carson loved and spearheaded, and it ended up getting an option and had people attached, but it ended up in production hell. It never got made. The script was
Ouch.
called The Disciple Program, and it was based off of a contest where the writer in the contest, they would submit 10 pages at a time, and the best 10 pages, like the best chunks of 10 pages, the people's 10 pages would advance slowly to the next stage of the contest until they had a 100-page script and the scripts were done and they chose a winner. And the benefit of that is because it was a contest, the writer was implicitly aware that every 10 pages needed some kind of change, a hook, a reversal, a reveal, some sort of surprise, an interesting engagement, so that every 10 pages something was happening that made you want to turn the page, and the story was shifting and evolving, and it wasn't becoming stagnant. Like a lot of writers will get lost in act 2, but if you have mini goals and you have reversals and you're making sure that every small section of it is as entertaining as possible, the script will flourish as a result. And taking inspiration from the way the Disciple program was written, I like to do something similar in 5-page sections, or maybe a little less, or maybe a little more, where there's a push to the next section of the story every 5 pages. And eventually you reach the end and you're done. And then you have a script.
I gotta wonder, are there people that'll just sit and write a script, not even care about any background information, and then later go back and give those characters background information?
Okay, so here's the thing. You can sit down and you can immediately start writing a story. It's called a vomit draft. The problem is that if you just sit down and you don't know where the story is going, 99 times out of 100, the script is not going to be very structured.
Right.
Because there was no structure. It's just writing by the seat of your pants. And that can work really well sometimes. You can strike gold. You can get lucky. But most of the time, you're going to have to go back and you're going to have to rewrite it, right? So if you're the type of writer that needs to write the script in order to get that inspiration and to break the story, be that kind of writer. Do it works, right? For me, I like to do as much work as possible before I start the script, no matter how excited I might be to sit down and start writing it. That way, once I have a finished draft, that's the story. And any edits that I make are just in terms of improving it, not necessarily having to completely change elements and do a rewrite. So the more work you do ahead of time, the less work you have to do later. It's efficient.
At least you're not complicating the process. I have this thing of take my original work, write it as a screenplay, go back, re-edit the novel, then go back and re-edit the script.
Well, you're talking about a different approach to screenwriting. If you have an IP, if you have something like a novel or a book that's written, that's like having a giant outline.
Right.
So that's the type of thing where maybe instead of writing a vomit draft, maybe the approach is to write a step outline. Because the step outline, you're not sitting there for an hour wondering whether or not the next line of dialogue is good. Save the dialogue for when the dialogue counts, because why bother writing the dialogue if the scene is not going to be there? If you write a step outline and you know every scene and you know what happens in the scene, it's easier to move things around and change things. And then when you actually sit down to the script writing process, creating beautiful prose, making sure the action is right, creating the subtext, the little things, the scene writing portions of it is like a separate thing to do than the macro scale,
Right.
So like I think that is going to save time.
And of course, one of my biggest flaws right now is my prose when it comes to screenwriting. But even in my normal novel writing, everything's off the top of my head. It just comes out and then I put it to paper. But then again, I still have to go back and rewrite it at some point.
Right. Well, with prose in books, it's such a different universe because, like, being fancy and being flowery or getting into internal monologues, going off on asides, it's all part of painting the story. With a script, you have to be acutely aware that not only do you never want to lose the reader's attention, but it's also just a blueprint that
Mm,
other people are late, if it gets produced, are later going to look at and apply. So you have to be concise and simple, but you also don't want the writing to be mechanical and boring, like you're
right.
reading a VCR instruction manual, right? So for the younger generations, a VCR is like a DVR, except it uses magnetic strips of tape to get to play the video and audio. It stands for video cassette recorder. Um, what was I saying? Pros.
Yes.
As a screenwriter, eventually you will have a style. And a style is just the way in which you write a screenplay. And
Mhm.
it, like, depending on the genre, maybe your style is different. Maybe for a sci-fi you have a very technical and flowery with lots of alliteration and like analogies and fancy words, but if it's like a tight urban drama about some kid that sells crack and like ends up in a gang or something, like the style, maybe the style of prose is going to be punchier and more abrupt to fit the style of the story. And as a writer, like, your style will shine through and the prose will change based on the story itself.
Mhm.
And then, you'll have other writers like the dude who wrote Lethal Weapon, where he started a whole thing where, like, he was making jokes in the script where it would never turn up in the movie, but it makes the script more entertaining.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of ways to approach screenwriting. Like, you, for example, in a book, if you're getting it published, generally you have to write a complete sentence. You don't have to write complete sentences in screenplays. You can have single words as long as it's getting the point across and moving the story forward. That's all the reader matters, because ultimately there's two approaches to a script. You're either writing to impress a reader, or you're writing something that is getting made. And
Yeah.
then and so the approach to the script should be different. If you're writing for a reader, the script needs to be entertaining, have those jokes. If you're writing it to make it, you don't need the jokes, because who are you trying to impress? You might have instead, like, vivid technical descriptions of how the camera is going to be panning from left to right and going up the staircase, because you have a visual shot in mind,
Mhm.
right? And it's something, that's a stylistic approach in screenplays that I teach people. I call it forced perspective, right? In reality, forced perspective means something else, where it's like, you're taking a video and, like, you have your hand out and someone's in the distance and it looks like your hand is eating the person in the distance. That's the forced perspective. For screenwriting, a forced perspective is a way of using your prose to give the impression of a specific visual image, give the impression of a close up, or the impression of a camera pan, the impression of what the shot will look like, without actually saying the shot looks like this.
Yeah.
Because when a reader is reading a spec screenplay, you want to have them immersed in the script. You want them to forget that they're reading a screenplay. You want
Mhm.
them to be reading it and just get drawn up in the story. And if you have too many technical jargon, they're going to remember that they're reading a blueprint for something else, and maybe that'll pull them out of the story. But if you do it masterfully somehow, in a way that gets the best of both worlds, where you're describing those specific visual images but also keeping the immersion, like, that's the sweet spot.
Yeah. I mean, I find myself writing a lot of actions, but only things that are important as to a better understanding behind the character. But then again, this is really my first time um, getting into the profession itself. I've never had anyone tell me, "No, you're doing it wrong. This is how you should do it."
um as a screenwriter, the more you write, the more people will tell you everything you're doing is wrong and you're terrible and you should just quit and kill yourself and die and crawl into a hole and pull the dirt over yourself and cry yourself to death in the darkness, choking on the worms and the dirt. It is hard. You develop a thick skin over time because everyone is going to tell you that you're bad and that you suck. And the people that tell you that you're good aren't really helping, because how is that helping you hate yourself and your writing to like forge you through the crucible and to get out that weakness, to burn yourself into a red hot vengeful fury to prove them wrong, and then have the hammer of criticism knock away your impurities until you're made of steel like Superman. I know that's kind of ridiculous, but no, even when you reach a point where you're good enough in your writing, where you're like, this person's an idiot, they don't know what they're talking about, that scene is the best scene ever, and they're stupid. Even believing that the person giving the feedback has no idea what they're talking about, anything they have to give you is still valuable, because you can
Right.
always find something. There's always some nugget of truth in there that can help you improve your writing, even if it's just realizing that you're right and they're wrong and gaining confidence in the scene. That's still something.
Yeah, like that review I got back from one of the competitions I was in. Sure, they went into full detail, but they missed out on a lot of what it was about. So I'm rewriting it in a way that they would actually appreciate it.
Well, you have to be careful when it comes to feedback you get from contests,
Hmm.
because anytime you get paid feedback, oftentimes people will give you feedback because it's their job.
Yeah.
Like, they might just be finding things to niggle about. Like, if they just finding things to focus in on that don't matter, but it's the only thing they can think of because they're getting paid and they have to do it, right?
Yeah.
If you get feedback from people who aren't paying for it, uh, the feedback that they give is stuff that impacted them in some way, that drove them to actually want to say something.
Yeah.
That's why I encourage people who are in that feedback loop where they need feedback to improve, to either join writers groups or do script swaps. And it's not that hard to find writers who will swap scripts with you, and they'll read yours and you'll read theirs, and then you'll give notes to each other, right?
Hmm.
But you have to remember that generally, you're going to need at some point, um, sometimes it's good to have feedback from an actual consultant, someone who is a professional at giving feedback. Contest readers are not professional consultants,
Okay.
right? And like I keep plugging Script Shadow, but as an example, Carson Reeves runs this screenwriting blog, and he is a script consultant, right? There are many script consultants out there, but you're talking about people that read thousands of scripts,
Right.
that will be able to look through a script and tell you what they believe needs to be changed. And you're not going to get that from other writers. You'll get everything under the sun, but you're not going to get this cold approach from someone that's read everything, that's been there and done that, right?
Hmm.
Like whether, I'm not saying you every time you're done with the script spend $300 to $600 and get feedback from someone, but if you have the money, when you're 5 scripts in, 10 scripts in, 15 scripts in, take your best script and get a professional consultant. Not coverage. I'm
Hmm.
not talking about coverage. I'm talking about a consultant. Get a consultant feedback on your script and see where it stands, and you'll get insight that'll improve, even if it's stuff that you don't agree with, because maybe the consultant is saying this script isn't marketable, your script about an elephant is a revenge thriller. No, it should be like a family movie. And you're like, oh, why did I spend all this money when it's like a rewrite? But you know what? Like, at the end of the day, maybe that's what's going to get sold.
Yeah.
You know, like you have to sometimes look at your work not through the eyes of what is the better story, but what is actually going to make you money. It's like, that's why there's so many directors. You have this director that directs that big bread and butter movie that makes the money, and then the next two or three projects are their passion projects that are indie things and that don't get that many people making, and maybe they lose money, but the director is telling their story, what they want to tell, and then they turn around and do a Marvel movie or something.
Hmm.
Like you have to pick and choose your battles. As a screenwriter, no one's going to want to read or make like your passion project that's like a thousand other passion projects, unless you've done that marketable thing where they care about it. Otherwise, make it yourself. you know
What challenges do you face while writing a screenplay?
no challenges. All the challenge is in selling the screenplay and pitching it. Okay, the actual challenge is in writing a screenplay. um Pulling yourself out of whatever you're doing in real life to want to sit down at the computer and keep working, because it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and writing a script takes a long time. And when you sit down, you always have that feeling, oh my gosh, I can't wait until I'm done with it. But then and it persists, and you have to keep sitting down and going through the work and slowly getting there and getting there and getting there and getting there. And then finally, once you're there and it's done, you have a whole new set of challenges. The real challenge, which is writing the log line,
Yeah.
writing the query, getting people to read it. Right. And this is talking about like after it's edited, you have like your draft that you're ready for the world to see. You've already gotten feedback. If you're getting feedback from people, you're ready for producers, you're ready for managers, you're ready to put this out into the industry.
Hmm.
That step is hard.
Yeah.
That step is the hardest part, because most writers are introverts. Like not all of them, but let's be real. Writing is a very solitary experience. That's why I
Yeah.
write on Twitch. I'd go crazy
Right.
if I had to just be completely isolated all the time. No. At least on Twitch, maybe a few people pop through and I have a chat, or I'm hanging out in the Discord and I can rant to someone, and then maybe I need to focus and I leave, and I need but writing is a solitary thing, and there's ways that you can mitigate that, especially with writing with other people. But once you're done with that solitary aspect, then comes the networking, then comes maybe taking meetings if you're lucky,
Yeah.
selling yourself, marketing yourself. That's the challenge. It's hard. I
Yeah.
mean, I've been at this for a long time. I've written a lot of scripts. I don't face many challenges writing the script. Like it's work. It takes a while. You have to sit and break a story and break a scene and have a good idea, and maybe you struggle with a certain line, or you struggle with how the scene is going to work out, and you think that you suck and that you're the worst, and that the whole thing doesn't work, and then you get it to work, and blah 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 blah. Like there's a lot of million little different struggles, but the
Yeah.
challenge is getting people to read a script. Don't listen to anybody else. The hardest part of screenwriting is getting people to read what you've written, period.
Well, of course. I mean, I've had the privilege of actually pitching my project to multiple professionals. Okay. They love the concept and everything. They offer advice on how to make it better, and I'll take it to heart. But on the other hand, I'll have some stranger who I've never met before complain that my log line is not a real log line, and then question my ability to actually write as a screenwriter.
Log lines are the worst.
Hmm.
They are so hard, period. And
Yeah.
it's like there's tricks to it, and it's like it's a completely different skill. It's
Yeah.
writing a log line is its own world of struggle.
But I've had
Period.
professionals tell me that my log line is just perfect. And here's a stranger who's been taught by a blacklist professional, oh, that's not how you write a log line. How do you even know how to write a script if you can't even write a proper log line?
Well, right, because a log line is taking something that's 20,000 words and distilling it into one sentence.
Hmm.
Okay, there's a lot. Many stories aren't really built for that, you
Yeah,
know. And then, look, if you want to write a good log line, ultimately, there's four things, and it doesn't matter. Nothing else matters but these four things,
hmm,
really. Character. There
yeah,
should be a character in the logline, right? Who's the protag? Otherwise, what are you latching onto? There should be a goal.
right,
What is the character trying to do? There should be stakes. What happens if they don't do it?
yeah,
And there should be urgency. They only have this much time to do it, or like, or some sort of sense of imminency. Like if you have a script that takes place, like look at Foundation,
hmm,
right? Foundation takes place over hundreds of years. You know how hard it is to write a log line for Foundation? You're not going to have in the log line over like an epic saga over hundreds of years that blah blah blah. That's the type of log line that's going to appear on like the movie site that you're streaming it from, like
hmm,
Apple, is it for Foundation? I can't recall. But uh, the point is that like even writing something as epic as that, the actual logline, what you're going to be getting people to read, like it's going to be focused on the pilot episode. Like you better hope that hundreds of years aren't going by, and if they are, like find a way to make that seem urgent and immediate. Like like AI, right?
hmm,
Like AI takes place over a long period of time, like, but it was also not something that was being pitched on the log line. But if you had to struggle to create a log line over it, like you're probably going to avoid the idea of the time passing because it's going to throw people off, the lack of urgency.
hmm,
So character, goals, stakes, urgency. And really in writing a script, GSU again is like the core elements of creating a good story. There needs to be goals, there need to be stakes, and there needs to be a sense of immediacy. Like that's why that Steve Jobs app movie did well, where it was like two or three speeches that he did, but it was
hmm,
like just a couple days. Like each thing was like a day, and there was this own contained immediacy and urgency. Rambling biopics that take place over many years are a difficult sell, and it's a difficult logline as well. Urgency, I think, is probably what most people struggle with, and I think really you could just go back to what a classic story is. What what was it? Man, my mind is frozen. The classic story takes place over the course of the day. A Greek story, a Greek tragedy. There's a name for it that's escaping me. But it's a single day.
I'll have to show you my log line after this. While it is for the first season overall, I didn't think about making a log line for my pilot episode because they told me when pitching, just do the overall arc of the story as a log line.
It's called diegesis, Diegesis, a narrative storytelling technique where the events of the story unfold in a single day. Limited time provides a sense of immediacy and intensity, and it's used in Greek literature and drama to explore the events and emotions. That way, it creates the best storytelling experience. Diegesis. I feel like if you're a fresh writer, write something that takes place in as short a time as possible,
Hmm.
and you're doing yourself a favor because the level of difficulty to reach a good story is going to be that much less.
Right.
Writing some grand epic sprawling tale as a starting screenwriter, you're shooting yourself in the foot before you even begin.
I guess I'm shooting myself in the foot then.
Well, still, it's not like there isn't merit and lessons to be gained, but you are starting off with a higher degree of difficulty.
Right.
And even as a screenwriter, if you've been at it for a long time and you have dozens of projects under your belt, the degree of difficulty in approaching a script is going to be tangible and measurable. Whether it's something that you have to do serious research for and read books and study history and blah blah blah, or whether it's something that's about a fictional shark that lives in a goldfish pond. You don't need to know much. You can just start writing it.
Mhm.
Like that degree of difficulty is going to be there in every script, and the lower the difficulty, the easier of a time you're going to have in writing the script, period.
Do you have a particular genre that you enjoy writing the most?
Okay, great question. I like writing fantasy,
Hmm.
but fantasy is not exactly the best sell. Because it's expensive. It's generally based on IP.
Hmm.
So, if you're a writer and you want to break into screenwriting and all you're writing is fantasy, you're in trouble, man. You got to write other stuff to break in, like like to get people interested. And yet, alternatively, what if you're a good enough writer, eventually you can write something that's strong enough that has fantasy elements that people are going to be interested in, especially if it's cheap, right? Because like
Hmm.
fantasy by definition is going to be more expensive. You want to have a dragon? All right, great. That's going to cost a lot more money than if you had a go, like a golden retriever.
But of course, you know, you're writing for live action. I'm writing for animation. The
Exactly.
the price
Completely
is
different.
right.
Animation is, it doesn't matter, the same cost whether or not it's a dragon or a dog, because it's the same at a drawing.
Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
Who are some of your biggest literary influences?
Okay. Okay. Sure. Michael Crichton, uh GRRM, you know,
G-
uh
George R. R. Martin.
yeah. Uh uh Man, JR Token. I like people
Yeah.
with multiple middle names, I guess. I want to say Isaac Asimov. I mean, I already mentioned Foundation. Um, um, Literary, and then we're talking fiction, right? Because it's not like
Right.
you know, like maybe really I don't have too many. Grimm's Brothers Grimm, right? Hans Christian Andersen, right? Like I like
Mhm.
my ask me really my biggest inspirations, right? Brothers Grimm, Hans Christian Andersen, fairy tales, Neverending Story, Alice in Wonderland, right?
Yeah.
And then pulp fiction, Michael Crichton novels, the
Yeah.
Song of Ice and Fire. Um, those are the largest inspirations, definitely. And I mean, there's a million other thing things out there. Timothy Zahn, his books always impressed me. He wrote Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, Last
The Last
Command. It
Man
was the first real
sequel trilogy.
expansive universe, expanded
Yeah.
universe for Star Wars.
But of course, George Lucas approved that.
Well, yeah.
That was the only way you were able to get anything Star Wars written or in book form was if with his approval.
Hmm. Um, Other, I think that about covers it in terms of like, I liked I liked expansive fantasy and
Mhm.
science fiction as for fiction reading. That's what always inspired me.
Well,
I'd love to say that, like, oh my God, I read Hamlet and boy was I inspired. Like, yeah, okay, no, like,
I,
like, not to say I don't like Shakespeare, but come on.
I would love to get your take on my novel as soon as I'm done rewriting it. It's a fantasy.
Okay.
Um, how do you handle writer's block?
I don't believe writer's block is really a thing. I think that anyone who suffers from writer's block uh, needs to just sit at the keyboard
Hmm.
and write. I think that maybe people might have a difficulty tapping into their imagination.
Right.
It's a muscle, I guess you could say. If you have difficulty tapping into your imagination, play pen and paper role playing games.
Hmm.
It's fun. There's no pressure, and there's rules, and you don't have to run the game yourself. You could be passive and just watch other people do it. But if you can play a role playing game, if you can run a story in a role playing game, you
Hmm.
can sit down and write. Like, if anything, the only thing that you might be missing is you could say inspiration, but really, it's like you don't really need inspiration. You could just say, like, I am going to write about a dog today
Hmm.
and a turtle and in the park, and then just write it.
So,
Just write it. Make your neurons fire electrical signals to your fingers and put words on the screen. If you have to sit in your chair and stare at a blank screen for 3 hours, do it.
well,
You'll get past whatever it is. Whatever it is, maybe it's fear. Maybe a writer's block is just fear.
well, in my case, I'm writing my. I was working on my second novel. I had one question pop up on two aspects of the story going forward, and I couldn't figure out which one would be better off. That's my writer's block. I've been working for months trying to figure
Well,
out the
you
answer
just
to it.
ask the AI.
Just ask the AI.
Yeah.
I've not had the best of anything with AI, especially with my work.
Okay, so if you were talking to my friend Chris,
Hmm.
and not me, he would be telling you that we're already past the point of no return. In 1.5 years, humans will be obsolete. The entire film industry is going to eventually die. Every industry is going to fade away. Every single person needs to drop everything that they're doing and invest all of their time immediately studying AI.
Hmm.
Because what's happening is, over the next 6 months, you're going to have people, it's going to reach a point where it doesn't, because you're not already on the ground running,
Hmm.
no matter how long you spend to figure out what's going on and to fully understand what's happening in the field of AI, by the time you learn it, the entire field is moving on. We're experiencing like an acceleration, right? Like
Hmm.
20 years ago, you go to school, you get an A+ certificate, you can install networks and computer network stuff, and every couple of years you refresh yourself, right?
Hmm.
Right now you spend 6 months learning about the AI system. 5 months into it, the entire model has shifted and you have to start over. And what's going to happen is then it's going to be 5 months, and then it's going to be 4 months, and then it's going to be 3 months. And you'll have people where the experts will be dropping off, people that by the time they've caught up, the field has moved on, and we're approaching a singularity, and everything is going to change. I see people talking about the writer's strike every day on Twitter, and people say things like an AI will never be able to do this, an AI will never be able to do that, and it literally scares me. It frightens me that
Hmm.
people perceive AI based on the public facing AI that exists right now, that's in the public sector, that came out 5 months ago,
Hmm.
right? Because people view it as like a gaming console. PlayStation 5 comes out, that's the technology, and it lasts for 5 years, and all the games are going to be in the same technological level. It's just new content. And they think of it like, oh yeah, and then some next chat GPT will be out, and that's like the next PlayStation. But it would be like if a if a new PlayStation comes out every 6 months, and then 5 months, and then 4 months, and then 3 months, the whole world is changing, and storytelling is going to be changing too. The unions, the industry, everything is grasping on. They say the mini rooms are the most important part of the writer's strike, but really it's the idea of the AI. And the studios believe they can have the AI crank out a story. They type in the things, it puts out the story, then they hire a writer on gig and have them edit it and make it actually good. And they spend 50 cents on the tokens and X thousands of dollars on the writer, and then they have a draft. And I'm sure it's going to be terrible, but that's like this vision that they have in their head. Even if it's just taking the scripts that writers write and throwing it in at the AI, and the AI spits out a potential profit, gain, and loss, right? The reality is that we're approaching the point where visual stories, images, voices, all of this is going to be so prevalent and so easy that it's going to get to the point where it's like, oh, you liked that show, well, you just watched season 60 and the AI can generate season 61 for you, based on your preferences, or someone is spitting out this information. Everything is going to change, and no one really knows the direction that it's going in. You have Twitch channels now where you have scripts they go through the GPT and it comes out the other side, and there's visual animation and there's voice AI, and you have within 5 minutes of processing time from a sentence prompt, 3 minutes of dialogue and interaction between characters with visual images and voices. And this technology is in its infancy.
Yeah.
Everything is going to be changing. You're a writer for books, novels. I saw a program that was in beta that got released just a few days ago that the creator is bragging about on Twitter, and people on Twitter are freaking out, saying this person is a monster and they're what's wrong with everything, and machines shouldn't be doing this, and shame on this person. And what it is it's a program where you put in information about a character, and like information about concept and scene structure, and then scene beats, and then you click generate, and the AI starts generating prose in the style that you want it to, and you can edit the prose and change the things, and it will write the scenes for you based on the previous. It's like we're slowly approaching that point where the creations of human creativity and imagination will be indecipherable from the creations of AI. And it's like the development of AI is nothing novel at this point in time. It's only going to be derivative. And like the most insulting thing that I could ever be called as a writer is saying your work is derivative, because then it's like, oh, what's the point? It's just something that is just based off of something else. I mean, sure, you could go back to the Bible and say there's nothing new under the sun. Everything that has been done will be done again.
Well, it's like my work. I have no clue what story it's supposed to be based off of, but I'm told it was the best. Um, what is it? Variation of it he's ever heard before, but he can't even name it.
Right. Well,
Again,
again, that's variation, exactly. Finding an approach to something, a new approach, turning something on its head.
Even then, when it comes to AI, sure, let it get better. I still want to be able to sit down and write everything and ask an AI, how can I make this better? Okay, that's it.
Exactly. And that's like the nature of using AI as a tool, right? But there's something called artificial general intelligence. And then eventually, more advanced than that, you will have eventually AI that can think, AI that can create new. And when you have AI that can create new, entertainment is going to change.
Yeah.
And I think that the most tangible way that people could appreciate what it's going to be like, picture a MMO in 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Right, where it's on your computer screen and you're using your headset and you have a mic and everything. But when you go up to a character, an NPC in the game, you could have a half-hour long conversation with this NPC if you want to. You can talk, and they'll talk to you, and some story writer that's creating the story for the game, rather than writing the dialogue for the character, has written a complex background and all the emotional states and the history for this character, or like, and even use the AI to help generate even more complex history based on specific prompts. And then the AI will generate, and that generated material based off of the prompts of the creator is what you'd be interacting with. And there's going to be this real meld between it, and that interaction is where it's going to shine, because you're still going to have the industry hanging on, where you have Marvel movies and you have IP that no one else can touch, and that's where the interest is going to be. And then you have human stories that tell something about the human condition,
Mm-hmm.
and then everything else, a lot of stuff is there's going to be a flood of new material. Everything is changing. No one knows what's going to happen, but the unions know that it's the time for them to stand up and do what they can to protect the workers from being exploited. Otherwise, you know, it's gonna get bad, because yeah, okay, you could be like an office worker, maybe your job is in jeopardy, but like creativity is the last bastion when it comes to humanity, the ability to create new novelty, invention,
Mm-hmm.
right? Terrence McKenna said with 2012 that we were approaching a point where novelty is lessening. There's less and less things that can be new, and then everything is derivative, everything is a variation. And an AI, if everything is a variation, then an AI can do everything. Whereas the creative aspect, the only bastion that humanity has as a recourse beyond that, is the realm of the spiritual, something that
Mm-hmm.
computers cannot touch until you approach territory like Ghost in the Shell. Is there a sentience behind the AI? And the thing is what we're really looking down the head of is transhumanism, where people will be merging with machine, and then you have a melding of spirituality and technology. Is that creating something better? No, it'll be different. I know I'm getting off on a tangent here, a huge tangent, but what we're talking about here is people using their creativity to create stories that'll either be in the medium to be read, or that other people are going to use as a building point to create a visual art that people will sit and enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that essence is changing.
Yeah.
It's never, there's been new technology, the invention of film. It used to be just books. Before that, it was storytelling, and poetry was the big hit, right? Epic
Mm-hmm.
poems. Before that, without the like, really, human history ultimately goes back because people talk to each other, the interaction that people have, storytelling. It's at the heart of what it is to be a human being. Like, you could be a crow and you could use a tool. Like, it's not the invention of fire, or like a club or the wheel, that makes humanity what it is. It's the dialogue that people would have around the fire, talking about that time they were using the wheel and tripped, and laughing about it.
Yeah.
That storytelling is at the core of the human experience. And as we broach AI, you're having something that isn't human
Right.
telling stories.
But aren't there still limitations to a top-down AI based on technology? I mean, sure, we can
No,
actually advance the technology ourselves by creating a quantum computer where it can actually think beyond ones and zeros.
no.
You don't think so?
A human brain uses 12 watts
Hmm.
of power. 12 watts, right?
Hmm.
A computer, my computer uses a lot more than that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have a limitation based on the GPU. You're going to have a limitation based on how large the largest the largest building in the world is, the NSA data center that is being filled and filled and filled with information to train the AIs off of. Yes, there's that limitation, but that's what the singularity is. The singularity is effectively a point where the AI can improve itself.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a limitation in processing power and structure, and that's also where transhumanism comes in. Look at the number of neurons in a brain. You think a computer, like they already have Neuralink. Like you could have, like, look, it's like a Matrix scenario where
Yeah.
they say in the Matrix it was using the people for energy, but arguably that's a lie. It
Yeah.
could be using the people for the processing power.
Right.
You know, there this the code the code that exists in our current processing architecture, the current power that we have, isn't a limitation for AI. It's more of a case of what the model is. How do you create something that can think for itself, that can have its own agency,
Mhm.
that can think, right? And
Yeah.
the thing is that, like, it might seem crazy to us, but it's happening right now. And as storytellers, I feel that we're at a point where science fiction is the real world.
Yes.
And the medium, the way in which we tell stories, the mediums that we digest those stories through, it's all changing.
Yeah.
And we as storytellers have to keep up, or we're going to fall behind and we won't have a seat around the fire to tell our stories anymore.
Right. Now I had to start paring down a lot of the questions because a lot of them got answered, but I have like 3 questions left.
Ask them the
Okay.
lightning rounds. Give them to me.
How, what advice would you give to aspiring screenwriters?
Don't do it. Start focusing on AI instead. You can get to a point, if you can be good at AI, you can be telling stories in a new way that no one else is thinking of. If you want to get good at screenwriting, read scripts. Don't get into screenwriting. I know it's insane for me to saying it, but don't get into AI. Set up a YouTube that creates AI stories. Use your desire to tell stories through the new medium. Don't get left behind. Don't
Yeah.
be the one spending 10 years to learn a medium that in 10 years might not exist or might look completely different.
Yeah. How do you approach pitching your work to producers or studios?
Great question. I'll let you know when I figure that out. How do I do it? Cold queries,
Cold
spend
queries.
money on virtual pitch fest, spend money if you have it on contests. Um, know people, network.
Hmm.
It's the hardest question there is. I don't know.
Okay.
I've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on
I,
virtual pitch fest alone, trying to get people to read my work. I just finished a script yesterday. How am I going to get people to read it? I don't know.
See, I'm working off of disability alone, so my funding is dried up. I do believe I can make it, though.
Well, belief is important because belief can change the universe.
Yes. What projects are you currently working on?
Great question. You were nervous about this question because of the
Yes.
writer's strike and blah blah blah. So, currently working on, I just said, I just finished a script yesterday. Galaxy of Gladiators. Man, did it come out cool. This is a project where the outline itself is longer than the script. The outline is 76 pages, the script is 69. TV pilot. That might seem long for people who are like, "Oh, you jerk. You can't have an hour-long drama that's over 60 pages." Like, sure you can.
Mhm.
The script is as long as it needs to be. If it's good, if it's entertaining, fine. Plus, with the it's not that big of a deal. It is if you are fresh and you need people to read it, and people don't like opening up a script and seeing a lengthy page count. If it's a feature, you want it to be less. Whatever. I'm rambling. Galaxy of Gladiators is like a cross between Spartacus and Warhammer 40K. The pilot episode is about a woman from West Virginia who doesn't realize it immediately, but has been abducted by aliens and is a clone and has been placed in an arena where she has to face off against her dead daughter, against the man who killed her daughter. And it's all a test to get her to understand the nature of this arena system, because they are trying to breed the perfect gladiator through clones of their emperor. I could rant about it for a while. It's complex. TV shows need to be more complex than films in order to have this grand story engine that can last longer. I guess I say I'm working on it right now because I have to create the query for it. I have to create the pitch deck. I'm going to use Midjourney to generate AI images to be able to try to have a supplemental for when I pitch it out. Beyond that, I have concepts for other projects. The next project, one of them is something called the Winning Plan. It's about a middle Eastern European country that develops the world's first AGI, artificial general intelligence, and uses it to very quickly and effectively win a war. And at that point, when the person who created it realizes how powerful it was for the military applications, uses it to become the dictator of their country, very quickly implements a coup, very quickly becomes the leader of their country, and then asks the AI to create a strategy for them to become dictator of the world. And the story beyond that is about various characters and how they're paying attention to what this country is doing, suspecting that the artificial intelligence is behind it. It's about the nature of war and how we're approaching a point where artificial intelligence is going to dominate war, and how it's fought to the point where yesterday China made a statement saying that in the future war will involve no people. It'll just be machines, the raw industrial output of countries battling each other, as opposed to their financial output or their people output, right? And then, like, philosophical questions. That I have another idea for a project that would be about a multi-generational starship that's nearing the planet where everybody is going to be settling on. And there's this old android worker. He's the last of its kind that everyone makes fun of. And he's depressed and he tries to kill himself, deactivate himself. And he accidentally turns off the holographic crew that runs the ship, and everybody is helpless. And suddenly this android worker is the last hope for this generational ship to reach its things. And I have other ideas, but I want to tell stories that incorporate AI. And not only is it a hot topic that I feel like people will want to hear, but I also think that it's important for the average person to start incorporating the understanding of what AI is, how it can change their daily lives, and what it means for humanity as a whole moving forward. Because if nobody asks these questions and nobody does anything about it, we're going to find ourselves obsolete and out of our depth. And I think that the nature of fiction isn't just about reflecting on humanity and asking those questions about what it means to be human, but also what is in store for us.
Hmm.
Like on the surface, you can have stories that are just entertaining, but there's always larger questions at play, whether it's good versus evil, whatever the themes are. And I think that really AI is at the forefront. It's what I'm interested in, and it's some of the stories that I want to tell. Beyond Galaxy Gladiators, which is nothing to do with AI whatsoever. It's aliens and
Hmm.
Spartacus in space. Um, I did a script, 1v1000, which is about, it's like a cross between Die Hard and John Wick. Except in an action movie, generally you have like the pro tag with a buddy,
Hmm.
and there's comic relief. In this script, the buddy is an AI. And then as far as what I have going on, I've been writing for over 15 years. I said I have written the script I just wrote is my 41st spec script. I sold a micro budget rom com that is in pre-production right now. Fingers crossed that gets made. The stats are gross when it comes to indie films. It's 15% of all indie films end up getting finished, and of those 15%, 2% end up getting distributed. So
Hmm.
it's 2% of 15% indie films ever find an audience. We'll see what
Yeah.
happens with that. And then I have a TV pilot called Wicked Wyoming, which amazingly enough is a Western that has fantasy elements, like a cross between Deadwood and Supernatural with Cthulhu and vampires and werewolves and demons. And I wrote the hell out of it. And I have a couple producers who love it and are currently packaging it. And when the writer's strike ends, if it ever ends, which I would assume it has to, because you're going to have the Screen Actors Guild joining the writer's strike inevitably come the next month, and then also potentially the Directors Guild. They're going to shut the whole industry down. They
Yeah.
have to, because people's the future of the industry is at stake. The unions have a lot
Yeah.
of work to do. But after all that is settled, go to networks. I'm uh, I'm at that point where I feel I have the skill set to be a net positive and create material that has a worthwhile place and a profitable place in the industry. And I just need to get people to sit up and notice.
Mm.
And these producers have, and Wicked Wyoming gets made, whether it's just the pilot on independent funding, or whether it gets greenlit, whatever. Then that's my in. That's my direction. That's where I'm headed. That's what I'm focused on. So
Uh,
really, when it comes to what am I working on right now, I should be working on the next episodes of Wicked Wyoming,
mhm.
since it's a 10 episode series and I've only written the pilot. But I'm probably gonna write the winning plan next, probably.
Okay. So we've gone a little bit over time, but that's all the questions I have for you today. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to meet with me.
Of course. Thank you for having me on. This was exciting, if not brief. I'm glad I could participate in the podcast. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
If you're interested in learning about the film industry or in becoming an author, check us out once a month as we interview professionals from across the industry. Keep up to date with our Twitter page to know more about who we'll interview next. Stay tuned.